Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Off the Comma. We are well underway in year 2026, which is really wild to consider. But it is life is lifing and life is an adventure. So very excited to be back again with another episode of the podcast, as we're a month away from year 3 of the podcast, which is really wild. I never would have thought that would happen. So that's pretty cool. And so I'm excited to be visiting with Vicki James, and I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a moment. But as is the case with many of our episodes, Vicki and I have not met before. So this is going to be an opportunity for me to meet and get to know Vicki through her story today. And what I really love about that is this is no different than what we could do on the streets with strangers or with people that we work with that we've never spent time with, or even people in our own family who we have never really thought to kind of really explore or go deeper with. So I know a lot of my guests on the show start out as strangers to me, and I think that's kind of cool because it's kind of it demonstrates an intentionality too. Everybody doesn't have to stay a stranger. So let me stop talking because it's all about you today, Vicki. Let's hand it over to you. Vicki, by way of introduction, I always ask my guests to start like, how would you like to be known? How would you describe yourself as a person? And then after that, just share with us anything you'd like for us to know about you.
All right. I think as a person, I want to be known, like to be known as somebody who goes out of their way to connect with others and support others. Like there's not enough connection in this world.
Mm,
And, there's a saying that connection is the opposite of addiction. And you'll hear more
mm,
about my story later, but I find that to be really true. And so part of, my story today is when I left the corporate America, what could I do that really helped foster connection and being of support to other people in a meaningful way, and really bringing more joy into my life, more purpose into my life. And so really been an interesting year. Also resilience is like, as I look back throughout my life and I look at back throughout this year, really resilience is really kind of played a big role in helping me make forward movement. But the funny thing
mm.
about resilience is you never know you're in it until you get to the other side. It's like you just, it's going day by day, doing the best you can, and then realize it's like, oh, through a number of right actions, I actually came through okay, if not better.
It's so true. I mean, I really appreciate what you're sharing about yourself, and you're right. It's so true. It's like resilience is kind of similar to me as like bravery. People will say, "Oh, you're so brave and everything." Well, like I didn't know that until after I did the thing, right? It didn't feel brave when I did it, but then, it's kind of an interesting like, and that's what makes it brave, and so
Right.
forth. So I really appreciate that description. I'm looking forward to seeing how some of these traits and characteristics shape themselves out in your story. Just by way of brief introduction, before we get into the story, what else would you like for folks to know about you? Hobbies, interests, work, anything like that?
Okay. Yeah, I'll start with hobbies because it's always nice to start with the personal side and not get to somebody's job right away. So
Hmm.
I really love to explore new places, archaeology, history, that kind of thing, which is kind of invested in a travel bug for me, which turned into just this year. I finally made it as a digital nomad, which has been long planned. And I'm currently joining you from Valencia, Spain, which is where I hope to ultimately settle down and find residency here. But yeah, it's just, to be surrounded by history that you can't find in the US because the US is just too new, let's face it.
Hmm.
But other cultures, and I'm learning so much about how, other countries take care of their citizens, how communities take care of each other in ways that I haven't seen other places. And it just brings like, joy to my heart that, the connection and being supportive of each other is out there. And I know it's in the US as well. I think we're having a harder time seeing it these days, but it's always there when you're looking for it. But just to be in a different culture and to see, the things like in Spain, there's the two kisses, like they're very affectionate. And as an American, it's kind of like, oh, this is weird. But at the same time, it's a lovely weird, not a icky weird. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I want to acknowledge something else that you shared with me before we started recording. Estás aprendiendo español ahora. You're learning Spanish as
See,
well, which I think says something about you. And tell me if I'm wrong. I'll reflect quite a bit through our conversation, but I think it says something about you and your interest in becoming part of the local community and joining the culture versus expecting the culture to serve you. And I know I'm kind of getting off track a little, but we see
no, it's good.
examples of that a lot, especially in Mexico, where folks will go down there and live for extended periods of time and never have learned the language.
Right. Yeah. No, and it's important to me, precisely for what you say. I didn't come to Spain in order to embed myself with expats and not change anything. One thing I've
Hmm.
learned in order to change your life, you have to change your life. And that means doing some things that are maybe slightly uncomfortable. But for
Hmm.
me, it's like I want to extend my business in Spain. And if I'm going
Hmm.
to be a business owner here, like I need to have at least a conversational, grasp of the language. But even smaller than that, whenever I take a bus, not every time I take a bus, but too often when I get on a bus, some lady sits down next to me and starts talking to me, and of course I'm not conversational yet, so it's like, oh, uh, lo siento, estoy aprendiendo, pero un poco español. And then they start talking to me in broken English, and it's fine. But I would
Hmm.
love to be able to actually respond without that instant of like, "I'm sorry, I don't understand. It's not
Yeah.
comfortable." And I so want to engage, and just not having that ability, which I didn't know until I got here. I've been here exactly a month today,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
yeah, I've been trying to learn Spanish for quite a while, but using apps and, a couple classes here or there. But it wasn't until I got here and had to have conversations where there was no backup. Like, no, I have to meet this person where they are.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, they didn't have enough English. I have enough Spanish that we can get to the other side. But sometimes we can't, and it just
Hmm.
doesn't feel good. And that's not how I want to live my life. That's not how you build connection. That's actually putting a big, huge, brick wall up. Um,
Hmm.
in front of something that could be really beautiful if it wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, and yet another acknowledgement, like what you're describing is discomfort, right? And so often when we experience discomfort, especially around languages, we just completely shut down. I'm learning Spanish myself, and I've just decided I'm learning for the rest of my life. So it allows me
Right.
to go at a little bit slower pace. But I'm learning that it's not just about learning another language, which is hard, which is why we should always respect anyone who can speak more than one language, but
Exactly.
also my relationship with comfort and discomfort, and how do you push through that to a better outcome, better objective. Yeah.
Yeah, and language learning is such a good example of that because for myself, I don't like to be wrong. So it's really hard
Mm,
for me to speak if I'm not entirely sure, but that's not how people learn languages. And it
mm-mm.
really resonated with me when I heard, when you think about how you learned English as a child, it was by just saying words and hearing words and being corrected when you need to be corrected until all of a sudden, grammar was ingrained. It's not like you remember grammar rules.
Right. Right.
And like learning a new language, I learned like how do you conjugate the verb? I'm like, I don't remember learning how to conjugate verbs in English, but
Mm,
apparently I did. Um,
mm-hmm.
so I don't know where I was headed
Nice.
with that. I know I was headed somewhere, but it's just no. I remember the idea being like you have to get a little bit of uncomfortable in order to progress. And when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
language, my biggest barrier is my resistance to looking silly. Um,
Mm,
Classes, it's expected to look silly, and I realize my classmates look just as silly as I do. That helps. Um, but I've been in situations where I just needed to convey my thought and whatever the cost. And so it's helpful to actually be talking to somebody who doesn't know English to be like,
mm-hmm.
okay, let me see if I can piece together enough words here that we can at least, get the expression out and understood, even if it's
Yeah.
not grammatically correct or if there was a better word, that kind of thing.
So true. Well, I want to get into the rest of your story too. So I will end this little piece, which is an important part of your story, with continuas, amiga. Keep it going. You will learn, I guarantee you, even through a little bit of osmosis. And
Right.
before we get into the five questions that kind of framework the rest of our conversation today, one question I always ask every guest is, as you think ahead to the next 30 minutes or so and sharing your story with us, what intention would you have for yourself today?
You have actually given me something that I hadn't considered. But when you first started saying, I'm going to reflect back to you, that's a huge opportunity for me to learn more about myself and how I'm perceived, which is
Mm,
hugely important to me because, I started off saying, I want to be a person who's known for, connection and support and warmth. And so I think it's just to get that reflections back and see what I learn about myself through the process.
cool. Nice. And people often do. I think that's something that we demonstrate a lot on this podcast is that there's so many different things that you can take from the podcast as a listener or even as a guest who's sharing your story. My intention today is to support you in your intention, obviously, create the space for you to be able to share your story. And that there will be people out there who will hear you and see a little bit of themselves in you and your story that'll make them feel a little bit more connected, maybe a little less alone, and in the best of cases, maybe even feel inspired or empowered to go out and do something they've been wanting to do.
That'd be awesome.
Let's jump into the first question then. Okay, Vicki, question one. Where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Yes, that's a good one. And what really comes to mind for me was just a little bit more than a year ago, I was let go from a corporate job
Mm,
and I was living in Manhattan. Love Manhattan, by the way. I love New York City.
hmm
But it was like, okay, at the time, 55 years old. Do I really want to go find another corporate job that will let me continue to live this lifestyle? And the answer was a flat out no. It's like,
mm,
yes, I will have to give up my New York City apartment if I'm not working in corporate America, but that's what I want. It's
hmm
time to live a different life, a simpler life. So throughout the course of the year, I started building a new business. Eventually left New York City. I liquidated everything I own in the process, which was way harder than I ever imagined. Probably because New York City,
hmm
you can't have a garage sale.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah.
the logistics were challenging. We'll leave it at that.
Can't throw it
Uh,
out the window either.
we kind of can. I mean, the big stuff you can put on the curb, it'll eventually, but there are some things that are easier about New York City, but the idea of like having a garage sale, no. So
Yeah.
I was using a, Facebook Marketplace for like 3 months straight, selling, 20 items at a time and also buy nothing groups. I do a lot of buy nothing groups as well. Kind of pay it forward
Okay.
when I can. But yeah, that was a really, really long process. But in the end, it's like I'm currently living through one backpack and two suitcases.
Oh,
I do have a
wow.
couple boxes back home in Washington State that will someday meet me in Spain, but it's pretty minimal.
Mm,
And the realization that without the job and without the things, um, I'm able to live so much more simply and I'm enjoying it. It's like not having a bunch of clutter to go through. In fact, when I leave this apartment, I'll probably, take out a few more things. It's like, why did I really bring those over? I didn't touch them. Which is something that I'm slowly learning throughout my life. I'd once heard that when you move houses, if there's a box that hasn't been unpacked in a 6 months, like throw it out. And so now that timeline's just shifting for me. Unless it's a very specific, Christmas item or seasonal item, but yeah, if you're not using it, it's just baggage.
it's so true. I'm gonna self-reference for a moment, if I may, and then I have
Yeah.
some questions for you. I can so relate because I mean, people have heard here. I'm living as a nomad myself too, by intention, by choice, and so forth. And it was the opportunity to downsize and simplify, as you described. And basically, I just have a handful of bags in the trunk of my car, and I don't count the work bag that has all the computer equipment or the bag that has the podcast equipment and stuff like that. But it's like I have a bag that's clothes and a bag that's like sort of like kitchen and bathroom, if you will,
Mm.
right? Like the toiletries and then the extra plugs and cords and the brush I clean out my water bottle with in hotel sinks and so forth. And even then, like, oh, by the way, and those bags cover 4 seasons. But even
Right.
then, just today, I was like, I have too much stuff. I have too much stuff. So it's fascinating how you can go from how could I possibly not have more to how could I possibly not have less, right?
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say, I think like my approach in this nomad is like right now it's fairly cold in Valencia and I don't have a lot of warm weather clothes. It's like,
Mm,
so why don't I go buy a sweatshirt from the local thrift store or the cheap, what they call a chino downstairs, which is a Chinese run everything shop where everything's pretty
hmm.
real reasonably priced. It's like I can buy these things, but with the purpose of letting go of it when it no longer serves me.
Right, right. Oh, I could go sideways here on a business idea. We'll talk when we stop recording, but like stop buying things. Like when we land at the airport, we just borrow things from the shops and then
Yeah,
return them. Like,
yeah.
but let's go back to you. Let's talk about your comma for a moment. So, because I know there's so much you could share with us, and what I think folks will be curious about because a lot of times when we listen, we can relate to certain things, and then we just kind of make assumptions. We nod our head, yeah, 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 I know what you're meaning. But that was a really big story packed into just a few minutes of narrative. Like you get left go from your position or leave your position, and then you make this big arc to what do I want next? I want to do something different. And then this just giant story of not just the physical aspects of downsizing, but also your mental and emotional aspects of downsizing. I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit more for us of like, what was that experience like for you? How did you make the decision to make that big pivot? What were some of the challenges? Because I mean, I have to admit, like that couldn't have been easy for you. That had to be a huge change for you.
Yeah, I got a little bit lucky in that a couple years prior, I had started this exercise every New Year's Day where I set like an intention for the year. And it
Hmm.
was actually January 2023, I went through Brene Brown's values exercise, which is find your top two values, which,
Hmm.
how do I find only two? But the values I came up with was, do I remember? Connection, or sorry, the two values I came up with were making a difference and integrity. And
Hmm.
with that, I was also kind of trying to live my life with more purpose. And so the prior year, I'd come up with my intention for the year was to align. So that was the 2024 vision. And
Hmm.
then 2025, it evolved to Align and Thrive, which coincidentally is the name of my LLC. So I will
Okay.
always remember that my intention in life and with my business is to align and thrive. And so it's an opportunity to say, what does it mean to align? And what does it mean to thrive? And how will I get there? And
Hmm.
even today, I still have to make pivots when I realize, oh, I'm doing too much of what they said, or I'm doing too much of what I think will bring me the right money. And I'm not actually doing the things that will, help me make a difference and that are, with integrity and in alignment with that align and thrive moment or the align and thrive, idea. And
Hmm.
so therefore, let's come back to align and thrive. Let's come back to integrity and making a difference and figure out where we need to adjust so that we can move forward, in concert with who we strive to be.
Hmm. So you had done the work, you had the values, you were practicing looking at your life and finding ways to align with those. And then now we're at how do I use that to help me leave Manhattan, leave the apartment?
Right.
I guess I'm kind of curious. Maybe what I'm really curious about, Vicky, is how did you know what was next?
And it really started with like, how am I going to make money? Like I'm going from corporate IT, and like I know if I don't have anything, and luckily, coincidentally, years before I was finally debt free, which most of my adult life I was not. It's like, okay, well,
Mm.
if I don't have debt, I don't have a partner, I don't have kids. I do have an old dog with cancer, but she's not going to be here forever. She has since passed, which is why I'm here.
Ah, sorry to
Yeah,
hear that.
that thank you. But it was like, oh, to align and thrive means I don't have to live this life. This isn't even me. And when I think about
Mm.
like the way the women dressed at work with their heels and extra makeup, and like that was never me. I wasn't aligning. I was kind of an imposter in a different world, and it was fun for a while. So it was a chance to come back to say who am I?
Hmm.
And then going back to the values, it's like, how can I build a business where I connect with others in a meaningful way and make a difference, and I can stay, true to myself with that integrity that I'm looking for.
Hmm. Okay. I want to kind of just explore a little bit more before I go on to the second, of the five questions. Um, so then that brings you to Spain, to Valencia, and you've been there for a month. Why Spain?
It's interesting because I started scouting where I wanted to retire a few years back. I spent time in Panama and Mexico City and started, learning Spanish, Duolingo, which is helpful, but it's not the same people. Uh,
Right.
yeah. Anyways, but as I started, thinking about what other Spanish speaking countries can I check out, and I'll be honest, it was a conversation with ChatGPT, and
Mm,
ChatGPT was like, "Why not Spain?" I'm like, "Spain? I've never even thought of that." And then kind of what we came up with, it's like, well, all of your climate ideals, like Spain is a big country. You like
mm.
there's it can be the mountains, you can be different coasts, like it in Valencia in particular is a pretty mellow climate. And then, just kind of I wanted somewhere with good health care, with healthy food, and like it's like, yeah, Spain. Yeah,
Mm,
Spain. And then ultimately what it came down to is why would I not want to be in Europe? Everywhere I'd been looking is like $1,000 flight to anywhere. But in
mm.
Europe, like I get all of Europe to explore for a reasonable cost, being central here. And there's a lot of Europe that I want to explore.
Yeah, well, and it is interesting, right? I mean, I've had a few trips over there, certainly not as traveled as others, but very fortunate to have been able to at all. And it's not dissimilar to the United States, no surprise, right? Kind of the motherland for much of for some of the country. Um, but yeah, you're geographically so close to so many places and they're
Right.
connected through public transit and so forth. And selfishly speaking, my experience of Spain was that geographically and climate wise, it was not unlike California in terms of all of the different microclimates and
Yeah.
within pretty close proximity to each other. Okay. So, all right. You, had this pivotal moment. You made this big shift. The shift was really driven by your your alignment with your values, your intentions, kind of some of your long-term goals for yourself. And you both, it sounds like, correct me where I'm wrong, you
Yeah, yeah.
both threw yourself into it and carefully managed your way through it at the same time. So I'll jump into the second question and feel free to continue to expand on your story or go backwards if you need to.
Okay.
As you look back at this comment that you were on, what did it create for you?
It created permission to find out who I am and who I wanted to be and actually go down that road. I think I
Mm,
did mention that, previously I'd had considerable debt prior to moving to New York City, but just a lot of next right actions and a little bit of luck, like that fell away several years
mhm,
ago. And so it was like, okay, well, now that there's no expectation, again, I don't have kids, I didn't have, no longer have a partner. Like, what is my expectation? What do I need? And it turns out what I need is not a lot.
mm,
Get rid of the debt, get rid of the New York City apartment, and I don't need a lot. And so that really helped me, focus on what kind of life and business do I want to build for myself that supports what I need. Again, not a lot, is in line with my values and gives me the opportunity to enjoy life. For me, Align and Thrive and building a business should be about having the freedom to enjoy life and try new things. Too many
mm,
business owners like end up working 60-hour weeks doing things they don't like because they're not in alignment or they maybe don't even know what that alignment is. So again, you know, the LLC being named Align and Thrive kind of make sure I always
mhm.
have that cornerstone to come back to or that keystone to come back to.
And that
Um,
cue, right? Like that
yeah,
anchor to remind you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. So permission, I love how you said that permission to find out who I am and who I want to be.
yeah,
And it really kind of created the pathway for you to then focus all your energy into the new that you were building for yourself.
yeah,
You said you've said numerous times in numerous ways that like that corporate life wasn't really you. What was it like? Now let me just clarify. It
yeah.
seems to me, and you correct me where I'm wrong, that this wasn't like some sudden realization when you left corporate life that that wasn't for you. What was it like for you to be in corporate life with some realization that it's like, this isn't exactly me?
Yeah, there had been several years of like, why am I here? But I was making good money. I was getting money set aside for my nest egg, which frankly, given my prior financial situation, I did not have.
Hmm.
So I think it was what I needed at the time. But once I realized that I was safe, that I could take
Mm.
some chances and do some things that were really in alignment with who I want to be, it freed that up. As far as like living in corporate life, it was hard a lot of the time. It really was. Uh,
Mm.
I think because like my profession of project management wasn't necessarily taken, I don't know if I want to say seriously, but like the training I had wasn't in alignment with what people expected of me, and it was really hard. I was always being, encouraged to scale it back or do something different, and it's like that's kind of not why I'm in this role. Like, how do I
Yeah.
reconcile that? Um,
People
and
wanting you to go faster when the whole goal of project management is to focus on the quality to make sure you
right,
don't screw up, which involves inherently slowing down in order to speed up, right?
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, for a long time it'd been like I would see pockets of opportunity that felt good and right and who I used to be and where I wanted to be, but it was getting harder and harder to find those pockets. And so honestly, in the exit plan was already churning in my brain. Like I
Hmm.
knew Spain was part of it. I knew owning my own business was part of it. I didn't know what that business was yet.
Okay. What made you, beyond what you've already shared with us, because I don't want it to sound like I'm asking you the question again, but now that you've talked about this and you've really kind of landed right there on the new business, what made you settle on or decide the business that you're currently building?
Well, and it's interesting. It started with like, what kind of remote business can I build? Because I knew digital nomad was the future. It's like, well,
Hmm.
if I don't have to buy a storefront in Spain, I can do something different. And when I started looking, at what are great remote jobs, bookkeeping kept coming up. Well, my first
Hmm.
career was in accounting. I'm like, bookkeeping, I can do that. So I
Interesting.
started a bookkeeping business, but I called it Beyond Aligned Books because I knew just bookkeeping wouldn't be enough.
Hmm.
Like it was like, yes, that's something I can do to make money, but it's really not going to feed my soul and my energy in a meaningful way. And so the Beyond was about like, how can I further support the people that need bookkeeping in other ways, especially leaning into my experience in information technology as a project manager, as a business analyst, as an agile delivery lead. There's a lot of skills I've gained along the way that
Hmm.
most small business owners and especially solopreneurs just haven't had the exposure to. So how can I bring those skills in and support the small business owner beyond the books?
Mm, mm. Well, it sounds like it makes sense, right? Especially given the fact that you had an accounting background and so forth.
Right.
How did that work out for you, or how is it working out for you?
It's working out fairly well. But what I realized, the challenge was when I would go into networking groups and talk about my business and to talk about what Beyond the Line Books was. It always got the message was always very muddled when I started talking about everything I did beyond bookkeeping.
Mm,
So, for the purpose of simplicity, I started really focusing on my messaging around bookkeeping, thinking, well, as I get more bookkeeping clients, life will be easier. But what I realized was I was really limiting myself there. Like by early December 2025, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not in alignment. Yes, I do want to help solopreneurs get out of spreadsheets and bank statements into financial solutions that make sense, but I don't want to be doing bookkeeping full time. I want to
hmm.
be helping small business owners launch their businesses with certainty, confidence, and support. And so I
Okay.
really kind of shifted my business model. And the simplest way to put it is I went from a bookkeeper who provides small business consulting to a, small business startup mentor who also does bookkeeping.
Hmm.
Doesn't
Okay.
sound very different, but in my head, it's like a whole separate shift.
Actually, I guarantee you, anyone out there who's a solopreneur, self-employed, or has their own business knows exactly what you're talking about. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it has to do, and correct me where I'm wrong, it has to do with not only just the work you're physically doing with your hands and with your mind, but it has to do with the intention, it has to do with the outcome, it has to do with different clients, right? So yeah, I think that sounds amazing because it's an amazing like adaptation and like repurposing of skill sets and capabilities in ways that make sense. Like you're all of those people, but which do you want to focus on and which is going to reward you as much as it might reward your clients, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
Nice.
and then the other realization I made was like the solopreneur just starting out, who's my sweet spot. That's the one that just I just want to like take them in my little hand and help them, along the way. Um, but they don't have a lot of money sitting around. And so, how
Mm-hmm.
can I build offers to support them and bring them community? I'm all about community. Bring them into a community of others just like them so that we can support each other without, breaking the bank with a $5,000 coaching, offer or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not in alignment with who I am. What can I offer that does support this group of people in a meaningful way and really feeds my soul? And one of
Mm.
the things I love about it is like, for several months there, all of my articles were about bookkeeping things. That's not that, yes, there are great things I can talk about on bookkeeping, but the other stuff is fun too. Some of it's more fun.
Mm.
So now I get to
Mm-hmm.
expand kind of the topical areas that I'm messaging on, and
Nice.
being able to help the solopreneur beyond bookkeeping.
Yeah, nice. Okay, well that's actually a good bridge for us to jump into the third question because
Okay.
it feels like a good kind of transition point. Question three is as you look back at this comma that you were sitting on, what have you learned about yourself? Or maybe even what are you learning about yourself?
I think the first thing I learned about myself, all the data was there, but I hadn't quite put it together. And it's what enabled me to think about a shift on my business without panicking.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I've hinted at like, previously I was in a lot of debt. Like I've been, going after I realized that I don't have to make a lot of money right now. I'm not going to run out of money anytime soon. I could slow down and build a business with intention. And,
Mm.
I've since learned that when you build a business, you're probably not going to be profitable the first year. The second year, you might start making some profits, but it's really, 18 months beyond when you're getting into the comfort zone. And that I could quit trying to fast track that. I didn't need to fast track that. And I could build a
Mm.
business with intention that's sustainable and again supports others in a meaningful way. And
Mm.
making that realization, it's like, oh, I'm not at this level yet, and that's okay. Let me focus on my passion and where I think I can make a difference, and it will come.
Mm. Well, and then I kind of have two questions. I'll put them both on the table and you answer whichever one you want, because this is, I think, one of those points where people are really curious what that was like for you. One question is like, and how did you go about doing that on a daily basis with the challenges and the mental, like, the mindset shifts and things like that? The second question is, and what has it done for you?
I'll go with number two. So, what it's done for me is really enabled me to step back and build a business and a life with intention instead
Mm.
of with fear. And that's, something that I recognize in myself and I see in others. When we operate out of fear, we're probably not operating in alignment with who we want to be. We're trying to
Mm.
meet some ideal, whether it's something we think we should have or what others expect of us. And in some cases, that I compared it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs the other day. It's like if my safety and security are met, then that means I can take things just a little bit more slowly. Now, I do think there's people that are maybe trying to launch businesses with money as a driver that don't have a backup, and
Mm-hmm.
that would be very fearful. Um, but I think there needs to be some, thought and kind of foresight on what does it really mean and is this the right way to go? Because
Mm.
unfortunately, and I've seen this even through my group now, where people come into networking events like, I just got laid off, I'm putting my shingle up, and then they realize the work or the timeline to profits, and they're like, never mind. And I want people
Mm-hmm.
to know that factor up front. For me,
Yeah.
I was able to say, oh, okay, that's reality. And I'm in a position today, I wasn't 10 years ago, I'm in a position today that that's okay. Um, yeah.
I think back to my own journey because I'm self-employed as well, and it's the second time in my life that I have been, and I very much want this to be, from now on. Uh, and I think back, like, what would I and could I have done differently? And it's like I don't know that I necessarily would have done anything differently, but I think the mindset, like, and again, I say these things as if it's easy to do those. I think everybody kind of, in a way, sort of has to muddle their way through it. But if I could have wrapped my head around the amount of time that it will take before you actually feel comfortable and secure in the business, which by the way, I'm still not at secure yet, but comfortable. I'm getting there. And that, so like in my mind, it was one door closes, open the door, the next door begins, new business. And now I need to start making money right away. Whereas in hindsight, if I could have been laying some groundwork beforehand so that they overlap a little bit, then that, not because that's necessarily the right way to do it, but that might have helped overcome some of the tremendous, fear and insecurity that I had along the way
Right.
for many years.
Yeah.
What what was your relationship with fear? Since you brought it up, what was your relationship with fear kind of during this process, and how did you, what were some of the things you did to overcome it or to just manage it?
Yeah. My way of managing fear is to get more data, which is ended up being a good thing. So, I would like once a month, ever since, I lost a job, do this calculation of how long can I live off of my liquid savings? How long can I live off
Mm-hmm.
my liquid savings? And because I'm making life decisions, it wasn't really shrinking very much. It's like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden I had this realization. It's like, well, I'm scaling back. I'm no longer in Manhattan. There's and like there's a lot of bills I no longer have. Like
Mm-hmm.
so less money gives me longer term. But I thought about if I never made another dollar in my life, would I be okay? And the answer is yes. Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
would have to dip into my IRA just a tiny bit early, but it would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that was it was just getting that data, putting it end to end. Me like worst case scenario, I have to dip into my IRA a little bit.
Yeah.
That's actually acceptable.
Yeah. Okay. So there's
So
kind of
now I
like
don't need to,
this.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I don't need to worry about money.
Yeah.
I do. That's not my plan. I don't want to retire and dip into my IRA. I want to build this business. I want it to be successful. I want to feel like I've accomplished something. And again, help others build their businesses in a very meaningful way,
Mm,
avoiding some of the mistakes I made and others in the group have made along the way so that we
mm,
can do better, kind of paying it forward. In business, we're too busy networking and selling. We're not talking about the realities. We're not talking about our struggles because that's
mm-hmm.
kind of counter to making a sale.
For sure. So true. And I've experienced that myself as well in networking groups and so forth. I hear you describe the, what's my backup as a strategy. And then once you're clear on the backup, then that gives you kind of the freedom and flexibility to move forward with the thing you want. And that's kind of how I've operated too. Like, uh, anyway, we won't get into my story because it's about your story today. But yeah, that's an important part of it, right? And I think it's important to acknowledge, since you brought it up, that so many folks, especially here in the United States, given where we are at this particular time and era, there is the possibility for so much fear for people who are starting new businesses or starting anything new in their lives. And so it that almost becomes an important part of the business strategy at a certain
Right.
point, right? Is how am I going to handle the mindset, especially if the mindset includes fear, and what do I do with that? Because you're so right. I think about my own examples of when I was making fear based decisions or decisions based on scarcity, or I should probably say when I make, not past tense.
Right.
Um, it's, I may still even get to a similar outcome, but it doesn't feel the same for sure. So
Yeah.
let me ask you the fourth question then. I think you've already kind of shared some of this, but what would you add? And that is, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
I think what has changed for me is being able to live a life that I only dreamed of. And I hear people often say, and it's really weird when it comes to digital nomads, especially, ones outside of the US,
Hmm.
there's, most of us have heard from our friends, family, it's like, oh, you're so brave. I could never. And you're so lucky. And it's like, actually, you could. You're making choices today. And
Hmm.
so being able to move out of the choices that I didn't make and make the choices that I want to make is a liberating feeling.
Hmm.
And that fear-based thing still comes up for me. Actually, was having self-talk a lot. I talked to others about this as well last week, where it's like when faced with a decision, what if I focused on what I actually want instead of what fear and doubt are whispering in my ear? Because fear and
Hmm.
doubt are telling me this could go wrong, but what if and all of this. It's like, but no, I really want to do X. So let me focus on doing X.
Mm. If I may add, and you tell me if this is off base, exactly what you said about focusing on the things you want and making the changes that you want to make, everything's choices. And sometimes, as in your example, the one big choice can then sort of make so many of the other ones. Like,
Right.
if you had tried to do that while holding onto your apartment, we'd be probably having a different conversation, right? Some people probably could do that, right? But for you, the letting go, which meant the apartment, which meant the lifestyle, which meant the, expenses that you had decided were now unnecessary. Like that was the cornerstone of making so many other things
Right.
easier, right? I mean, is that true? Is that safe to say?
It is. And like, for the people that feel like they can't move, it's because there's something tying them where they are that they don't feel
Mm-hmm.
like they can sever. And yeah, and that's their choice to make.
Mm.
Uh, but, if it's a lifestyle or an expectation of how you live, that's your personal choice to make. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's related to family, like, oh, I could never leave my family. And I've never been close enough to my family to be able to, understand that deeply. So I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that. But yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a choice of giving something up in order to live a lifestyle like this, but it's not that you can't. It's that your
Right.
choices take you somewhere else.
And it requires really kind of a strong inventory, right? Like a lot of reflection because I'll speak for myself. When people are fascinated by my nomad journey and everything, I'm like, this isn't for everybody. And I'm not even out here trying to convince everybody it's for
Right.
everybody. Just like anything else that I coach people on, like when I made the decision to quit drinking, when I made the decision to quit eating meat, like I'm not out here, proselytizing, trying to tell everybody else to do it. I will be here if you have questions, but I'm
Hmm.
never going to go out and tell anybody else to do it. That said, if you have questions, if you've been harboring the thought, right, then absolutely you should review it all. And quite frankly, I'm even a big fan of like, even if that's something you'll never do, explore that for yourself anyway. Just see what it's like to think about it because
Right.
it can reveal things about you that maybe you didn't know that could be super valuable, right?
I love that. Well, and then the truth is, like, I would not be where I am today if not for a choice I made just over 10 years ago. And that
Mm,
was to quit drinking myself and to go to AA and to go through the 12 steps. I would not have made
congratulations.
it to debt free. I would have not, gotten a job that took me to New York City. Those things would not have happened if I had not made
Mm.
that choice in 2015, period.
It's thank you for sharing that with us, and that's
Yeah.
I acknowledge you hugely because yeah, that's another one of those things that even when you step back and look at it objectively, it's another thing that costs money and takes time and so forth, and when you set that down, then it frees you up to do so much more, right? I had a similar experience. I think about that now. Like, there's no way in hell I could be doing what I'm doing now. Self-employed, disciplined, right? And
Right.
I was pretty disciplined. I was kind of a functional drinker and drunk. Like I would still get up and go to work and bust my ass and make
Oh, yeah.
everybody else happy. I would just suffer a lot as a result of it. But I couldn't do the things I'm doing now. First of all, I couldn't, where would I have the time to go sit in a bar and drink 4 or 5 glasses of wine? And then that's valuable money in today's day and age.
Well, and you hit on something that functional alcoholic, because I was as well. But when we're stewing in discomfort all the time,
Mm,
you can't make a lot of forward progress. And when decisions are always fear-based because we haven't learned to lean into help from others, it's hard to make
mm,
the right decision. So I always say that getting debt free, landing in New York, or even getting here, it was just a succession of a lot of next right actions that just kept snowballing on each other that
mm,
wouldn't have happened if I was still, an active alcoholic living in fear, and discomfort all of the time.
mm. I love that. And I'm writing too because I think I've got something that I'm going to include in your show notes, a quote that you just said. But
Yeah.
um, and then just the effect of, and it could be alcohol, it could be anything we're
Right.
carrying. It doesn't even have to be an addiction or a substance, but anything we're carrying that takes up that emotional bandwidth and space. Like for me, the alcohol, it was like, yeah, I still did everything that I said I was going to do and so forth. It cost me in terms of, hangovers and feelings and so forth. And then just like when I quit, I realized like, oh my God, it's like I just put down this sort of perpetual sadness that was like
Hmm.
operating in the background and that I didn't really talk about with anybody because I didn't even know I needed to talk about it with anybody. But like that was affecting so much too. So
Yeah.
your
And to your
story
earlier
is
point,
about a lot of putting things down and setting them down, I should say.
it is. And then to your earlier point, it's like everybody has to have their own journey. And some people are really shy about sharing if they're in AA or not, but it's a
Hmm.
program of attraction, not promotion. And like, how is anybody going to be attracted to the program if they don't hear the success stories?
Hmm.
And, as of today, we're a success. And as long as I keep, keep in alignment with who I am and stay true to who I've been trying to become in the past 10 years, I'll through.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like I mean, everything you've shared with us today is about you living in alignment with who you are and who you want to be. So let me go into question five and then we'll start to wrap things up because
Okay.
unfortunately, all podcasts have an end, right?
Yes.
Question five, Vicky, is what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Yeah, I think for me right now, I am definitely in a state of transition because I don't yet qualify for a digital nomad visa to set up residency in Spain. So for me, it's that. It's for the business to be at the level I need it to be, that I can get my residency. I can,
Mm,
with 3 years, when I can hit my IRA for real, buy a home here. But I think there's always going to still be commas that come along, but that's going to
hmm.
be when this transition stops feeling like a transition and starts to feel like the next permanent chapter.
Mm, nice. Well, Vicky, thank you for sharing this with us and sharing your story. And, you know, I know it will resonate with a lot of other people, but there's the selfish part of me is like, well, it resonates with me, and that was good enough. So, so many
Well, yeah,
parts of it.
hey, if I helped one person and it was you, then this has been a great use of my time.
Exactly, right. Well, and it also, my nomad journey is a little different than yours, but you just validated so many things for me as well. So for the folks who want to learn more, maybe connect with you, see what you're up to, follow you on social media, I'll be sure and put the links in the show notes so that it's easy for
Awesome.
people to click on them. Walk us through, like, where are some of the places that people can find you?
Yeah, I think Substack is the place to hear about my journey more personally. So I started it right after that job loss, and you
Mm,
can kind of see everything you've asked me today is written in those articles. I call it
nice.
my weekly or biweekly or monthly, but I call it my therapy. It's an opportunity for me to kind of process where I'm at, what's happening, where I want to go, and hopefully doing it in a way that supports others in a similar place. When it comes to my business, LinkedIn is definitely a great place to connect with me. And then I'll make sure you have both my main website link, but then Thrive Hive is the new offering. That's the thing I shifted to. And that's where I'm
Mm,
building a community where members of the community get courses, they get community, they get meetings, and an opportunity for mentorship on how to build a business. And I'm focused on the nuts and bolts. So a lot of
okay.
business coaches out there like find your center and, strategically, like I'm like, no, do you have a CRM? Do you have a website?
Hmm.
Let me tell you what that means and how you can go about getting that done in the most cost effective way, because I'm always about return on investment and cost effectiveness.
Right.
So like let's help get a sustainable business built so that you can start to really thrive and feel good where you are.
Nice, nice. And I'm surrounded by others like myself, solopreneurs and people starting their own businesses and so forth. So I can completely appreciate how useful that kind of an approach is, right? The last segment, Vicky, before we wrap up, obviously you being here telling your story today is what this podcast is all about. Lifting up voices, letting us learn from and be inspired by others who were like us. We don't have to look to celebrities and millionaires and everybody for our answers. And your story wouldn't be complete if I didn't give you the opportunity to lift up others. And so I call this segment acknowledgments. It's your opportunity to give a voice to boost, to lift up others who matter to you. And that can be causes and organizations, it could be other creators, or just people in your life who matter to you. So I'll be sure to put the information in the show notes so people can reference that as well. But who would you like to acknowledge today?
Yeah, I think we'll start with the big one. And regardless of what recovery group it is, for me, it was Alcoholics Anonymous
Hmm.
because it really showed me how to put down the drink, to put down that thing that was harming me, and to live a life that was fulfilling and useful and could really, propel me to new heights. So we'll
Hmm.
start there.
Okay.
And then,
Nice.
so I had a career coach that I started working with when I was back in corporate, and we're still very much in touch. She's part of the Thrive Hive with me, and that's Elise Renzetti. And so she's really, been my cheerleader all along. And when the fear and doubt are in my ear, she's the one to be like, why is that a problem? Like,
Mm.
oh, okay. Yeah, hold me accountable, help me move forward. Yeah, and for my third one, this one's a little bit different. So it was created by Patrick Seaton, and I'm so grateful that I ran into him through networking on LinkedIn and had one-on-ones. And he introduced me to a tool that he built called Ask Alex, and it's a connector to Claude. It's an AI tool, but its focus is specifically towards sales, but I find it works for everything in life. And it helps me to craft messaging or think about things with a focus on humility, empathy, and curiosity.
Mm.
As an IT project manager, I tend to be all data. Well, I mentioned earlier in the podcast, like I am all data, data, data. And most people, if you slam them with data, it does not work well. And
Hmm.
so it's weird that this AI tool is teaching me how to approach situations with humility, empathy, and curiosity. And so I rely on it a lot and I learn from it every day. Just realizing, I think I was only using it like 2 weeks when I'm like, oh, wow, I was approaching the whole world wrong. Like I would do, here's a
Mm.
proposal with 3 pages of information. And what I learned through Ask Alex is like, that doesn't work for the normal person. And so I'm always just, it's odd, it's an AI tool that really helped me pivot how I approach others in a way that's more meaningful to them, just knowing humility,
Yeah.
empathy, and curiosity is what moves it forward. And I mean, for you, Paul, like you have, we would call it heck, like you have so much heck, and that's why your
Mm.
podcasts work. But for me, I needed something to show me that and to help me practice to get it right so I could see life on the other side and
Nice.
to get rid of the data bombing people because nobody likes to be data bombed.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm not exactly pro AI for myself, but I'm curious because that is certainly not the kinds of messages we're hearing in social media and out there in the mainstream conversations about AI today. So that sounds like a refreshing, different approach.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice. Well, Vicki, thank you again so much for sharing your story with us today, joining our community of storytellers here on Off the Comma. Obviously, I will follow your journey. We'll talk some more off the mic, but
Yay.
just grateful for your story and wish you a wonderful weekend ahead.
Great, thank you.
What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.